Somebody asked the question, how do I cut a threaded rod or a bolt and maintain a good thread form? Before we get into that, I see a lot of people when they cut threaded rods or bolts, they try to cut it off to where it's right even with the end of the nut. In woodworking, sometimes you don't have a choice, but for structural strength, you want to leave several threads and preferably about one diameter sticking out past the nut to have good mechanical strength. If you look at one of these T-nuts, you'll see that it's quite a bit longer than a nut, if for no other reason than this is a piece of sheet metal, and they need a few more threads in there to provide fairly decent strength. So don't cut them off too short. I measure back about where I want my thread to be. I usually take a magic marker and I mark it about like that. I'm going to come in here, I'm going to cut right between the two black marks on this thread. I've run a couple of nuts on here, put back here so I can get it in the vise and it'll hold steady. That's actually a nice square cut. It's got a little bit of a burr on it. We'll see that we can take that nut right off of there, but that's a bit premature. A couple of the videos that show how to cut a thread, they leave that thread flat, and I don't like that. I like to put a little chamfer on there, and that helps get that nut started on there. We're going to dress that burr off of there, and then we're going to cut a chamfer on the edge. I'm going to feed that in like that so that I'm grinding away from the threads. So if I do it like this, I'm going to create a burr into the threads. And now that we have the slight chamfer on the end of the threads, that nut will just come off of there by hand. And it'll go right back on again. Using the power hacksaw, I get a nice clean cut on the end of the bolt or the threaded rod. I go to the grinder with a fine wheel. I dress off that little bit of burr that was left and grind a slight chamfer all the way around the edge of the bolt and grinding away from the threads towards the center of the bolt. That relieves any burr or misalignment or mechanical damage that we've done in the process of cutting that off. If I have a thread that's a little bit troublesome, I'll just take a file, I'll drag it across there and clean that up, and then that nut come right off of there. Can I take a wrench and use that to work back and forth and reform those threads? I can, but I'm not doing any favors to that nut. Might as well do it this way, and it comes off nice and smooth. No damage to the thread, no damage to the nut.